Hi everyone. I wanted to do this video outside, but it's summer here in Ireland and naturally it's raining. So I'm in the living room. And today I wanted to talk about guides. So I know that, guides is such a massive part in our journeys, especially when you first come into the journey. You realize that you have a guide or guides, and everybody does, and you want to know who they are and can you communicate with them. And I know myself in the beginning of the journey, obviously I was reading and I was watching everything that I could, and some people would have this relationship with their guides and you think, wow, that's amazing, they can speak to them every day and they can get guidance from them all the time whenever they want to, and it just seemed so out of reach. But it also seemed really exciting, and you wanna know who's my guide and can I talk to them and how do I do it. And I suppose the first bit of advice I can give, and it's advice that I didn't take in the beginning, is to just trust it and kind of just go with it. It's not something that's going to happen overnight for the majority of us. But in the beginning, we want it to. We want it to be there now and, just have it figured out. But we can nearly end up forcing the whole guide thing, because I know that I had a visual of somebody who I thought was a guide, and I was like, okay, this must be my guide. And then when I would go into, say, a meditation to connect with the guide, this guide wasn't speaking to me. There was no answers, they were just there. And I know now that it's because I was forcing it. When you go into, like, say it's a guided meditation to meet your guides, or just your own meditation that you've come up with, to communicate with your guides, you have to go in with no expectations, because the thing is with guides, it's always going to be a bit different. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different, but you just have to let it happen. Because again, like, moving on to the likes of having one guide for this and one guide for this, if you have a new guide step in, how can you allow that to happen if you're setting an expectation for this previous guide to be there, So it's not forcing the situation, because, I had this one guide who came in, and then I started doing a mediumship course, and then a different guide showed up, and then after a little while a different guide showed up, but then the other two weren't really there anymore, and then this other one was there most of the time, and this other one is now here the majority of the time. This is my guide, and I know that now that this is my guide. But focusing too much on the others was hindering my progress with the guides, and even now, like, my visuals aren't great. I can't, my clairvoyance isn't the best because I find it hard to visualize things. So I don't even visualize my guide, unless, like, if I really, really want to, I could bring in an image of my guide. But this is years down the line, in the beginning, I was forcing that. And that's kind of why it wasn't really working for me, and now I know that my guide is there just because I know, just because I trust it, and I don't need the visual. In the beginning, we need these things to help us with that faith and with that trust. We need the visuals, we need the feelings of, show me that you're here, let me know that you're here in all these different ways, but actually just trying to trust, like, we all have a guide, we all have at least one, and probably more, and it's just kind of trying to settle into that, knowing that that guide is there. It's just that I'm not picking it up yet, and because if you're constantly like, but are they there, or did they say that, I think they said that, the questioning of it is kind of pushing it away, So I would say trust. And if you think that your guide said something, if you think that your guide gave you a nudge in some kind of way, or if you think this is what they look like, accept that, take it in, and just accept it for what it is. But try not to have too many expectations when it comes to trying to see them or hear them. Just let it be, because they can communicate in so many different ways. It's not always, you imagine when you hear some people talking about their guides, you imagine that it's this very vocal voice in their head that they can hear all the time, and they definitely know that's my guide. And maybe it is like that for some people. But in my own experience, it's been very, it's not as vocal as that. They communicate in a lot of different ways. So for instance, I remember I had a lot going on in my life at this time, and I all of a sudden had this like inspiration that I was going to start painting everything. I was going to paint this room, I'm going to paint that room. And before I knew it, I had all the paint out, paintbrushes, everything, and I was starting. And I thought to myself, I have so much going on. Why am I doing this? Like, why am I adding this to the stress, or the things I have to do? And I bent down to pick up a piece of newspaper to put a paintbrush on, and the piece of newspaper, the headline on it said, "It's good for the soul." And I just knew that that was an answer from my guides. I'm doing this because it's good for the soul, because I can just focus on this for a little while instead of filling my time with all this other stuff that I have to do. And I had no proof that it was them. I just knew, and I didn't question that. There was a lot of stuff I did question with my guides, but I didn't question that. I just knew. And there was my son's Teddy. So he has this little elephant comforter thing that he carries around, and it's called Trunky. And I couldn't find him for weeks. I couldn't find him, and we have a spare, but he doesn't know that it's a spare. So I was panicking, like, what if we lose this one? Then we have none. And one evening I said, help me find Trunky. I don't know where he is. Like, help me find him. And they said, what was it? They said, look somewhere you haven't looked before. And it was such a simple answer. Like, and I just got this idea of, like, go into each room and look somewhere in that room that you haven't looked before. And I did, and I found him, so it's very simple. It was a very simple way of looking at it, but I hadn't thought of it myself because I was so panicked about finding him. And, it's taking these little moments, asking them for help, and just trusting that they're there. And you don't need to know their name. You don't need to know what they look like. You can go there, but in the beginning, just learning that trust. Your energy is important. Learning how to feel your energy is important, because you won't be able to feel their energy come in. If you want to call them in, like, I'm sitting here and I'm focusing on my energy and I want to call my guides in, you're not going to feel them come in if you don't know what your energy feels like. So learning how to sit and just be in your own energy, in silence or with some music on, or however is comfortable, and learning how to feel that energy so that when they have stepped in, when you call them in, okay? And I will say that mediumship can really help the process, only because this is how it helped me with the trust, because, mediumship is evidential. You bring through proof for people, which helps you to trust that, that happened. You can say, oh my God, I actually did that because there was proof. You know that you didn't make it up because you're getting proof back, and the sitter can validate that for you. Whereas with your guides, there really isn't validation. So, there is validation in certain ways, certain little coincidences and things, but it's not the same as, like, evidence. So I think that mediumship can help, even if it's just a few readings, just to get that proof for yourself. Like, I can do this. I can connect to something. Why can't I connect to my guides? Why wouldn't I be able to, So I do think that helps. And also having a sense of humor. you know, there was one time I thought I felt like cobwebs on my face. And I remember thinking, oh, people say that sometimes that's a sign of your guides or spirit, you know, that if you feel cobwebs on your face, it's like a calling card, isn't it? And I remember thinking, oh, I wonder, is that my guide? Or I wonder, is that spirit? And then like 10 minutes later, it happened again. And I thought, oh, that's amazing, isn't it? And then another 10 minutes later, it happened. And I kind of pushed my hand up like this, and it was a hair stuck to my glasses, you know? So it's having a sense of humor with it. And like, okay, that wasn't them, but what does it matter if I did think it was them, you know? Nobody's going to think I'm crazy because it's in my head. It's not something that I'm broadcasting everywhere, you know. Like, it's okay to have a sense of humor with it, and it's okay to get it wrong sometimes. If you think something was your guides and then it turns out maybe it wasn't your guides and it was just a hair in your glasses, that's okay. But it was okay that you had the trust, and they know that you had that trust, you know? And I think that makes it easier for them to communicate when they know that you're going to trust. Until you get proof that it wasn't them, you're going to trust that it's them, and just run with it. I hope that helps. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Thank you for listening.